Hello, this is Dr. D, and today we are going to talk about reproductive system, primarily the male reproductive system. All right, so of course we know that the primary sex organs are the testes, right? And there are secondary sex organs or the accessory organs, which includes the internal reproductive organs and the external reproductive organs. What do we start with? Of course, we are starting with the testes. And you know the testes are in the sacs, which are called the scrotal sacs. Coming out of the testes is a pipe or a tube called the epididymis, which goes up and drains into another tube, and that is called the ductus deferens. The ductus deferens goes around the urinary bladder, comes down, and into this an ejaculatory tube joins, and this is the seminal vesicle, an important gland. We'll talk about this later. So now the vas deferens, which now was only carrying the product of the testes, is going to join up with the urethra from the urinary bladder. So now what happens is, this is called the spongy urethra. We learned it as the spongy urethra. Your book just calls it as the urethra, and it goes through through the prostate gland. So the first gland, seminal vesicle. Second gland is the prostate gland. Now this urethra goes through the muscles, and we enter into a structure called the penis, and of course it goes out. So here are the two muscles of the penis that you absolutely have to know: the corpus cavernosum and the corpus spongiosum, and it comes out through the prepuce to the outside. All right. Okay, so like I said, the testes is contained inside the cavity called the scrotal sacs, and it is suspended by the spermatic cord. All right. Now, if you look at the inside of the testes, you are going to see these tiny, highly convoluted, highly coiled tubes. And this is where the action takes place. This is where the sperms are generated by spermatogenesis. And this is called the seminiferous tubules. The seminiferous tubules drain into a short, straight tubule, and then it goes into this structure called the rete testis. The rete testis then opens up into efferent ductules, or called the ductus efferens. Let me write it down for you. And which opens up into the epididymis, and here is called the head of the epididymis, the body of the epididymis, and the tail of the epididymis, and which opens into now the ductus deferens. Okay, so know the difference between ductus efferens and the ductus deferens. All right, and the ductus deferens, what did I say? Will go up over the urinary bladder, join up into this, will drain the prostate gland as well as the urethra. So now what happens is, the common spongy urethra will carry not only product of the testes, but also also urine. All right, plus the gland secretion. So what did we talk about? Actually there are three glands. Here is the seminal vesicle. Here is the prostate, and finally a third gland, as you can see, the tiny gland, which is called the bulbourethral gland. All right, all three glands will be discussed later on and are important, so keep that in mind. Okay, all right, so here the development. So in the male fetus, they develop near the kidney. All right, and as the testosterone is produced, this is produced by the developing testes, and don't forget, adrenal what? Cortex or medulla we are talking about? No, adrenal cortex produces the innermost layer of the adrenal cortex also produces testosterone, right? We talked about that. And this helps in the descent of the testes before birth. Now there is a cord which is called the gubernaculum, and this aids in the movement. It will extend into the inguinal region of the abdominal cavity on each side. They'll pass through the abdominal cavity and it'll descend into the scrotal sacs and remain anchored via a spermatic cord. Now, if there's failure to descend, you end up with cryptorchidism. And of course, what happens? Crypto means what? Hidden. All right. And because the testes will lie in the abdomen, it'll lead to infertility, because even though there's sperm production, the temperatures are too high for sperm production. The sperms are going to die. Okay. So, like I said, this is the internal structure. We have already talked about this. Surrounding the testes is a thick layer called the tunica albuginea. All right. Now here is now if you cut this portion of the testes, what do you see? You will see these seminiferous tubules. Yeah, you see that, right? In between the seminiferous tubules, you should see interstitial cells, or the cells of Leydig. All right. These are the cells that will produce testosterone. Now inside the seminiferous tubules, you are going to see spermatogonial cells, or the sperm mother cells. The spermatogonial cells are going to produce the sperms via a process called meiosis. All right. So here, so these sperms, as they are produced, they are going to swim into what? Through the seminiferous tubules into the what? Straight tubules, into what? Retate testes. Then what? This is the ductus efferens, epididymis, the head of epididymis, body, tail of epididymis, into the ductus deferens. Don't forget, the ductus deferens goes up over the urinary bladder, comes down here, is joined by the ejaculatory duct, and will join also the urethra, now called the common urethra or the spongy urethra, and will pass to the outside. Okay, this is the passage of the sperm. Okay, so here, if you're looking at the inside, like I said, here's the spermatogonial cell. A spermatogonial cell in between are supportive cells, and these are called the Sertoli cells or the sustenticular cells. What does the word sustenticular remind you of? Well, sustenticular reminds you of sustain, right? So these cells, sustinacular cells, excuse me, are the cells that are like nurse cells. They will help the production of healthy sperms. Okay. And here is another picture of the seminiferous tubules. So with this, we come to the end of the male reproductive structure, and then more videos follow. Thank you for listening to me, and if there are questions or concerns, please stop by. Thank you. Have a good day.